Hey guys, tonight we glide back to a grey rose dawn above Elizabethan London, where gulls spin like parchment scraps on the chilly river breeze, and the Thames exhales a breath sharp enough to nip your fingertips. You're about to spend a full, gloriously ordinary day in the ink-splattered shoes of William Shakespeare, though with fish-slick cobbles, feather-ruffled toll hens, and your landlady's rent ledger closing in, you probably won't survive this without at least one comedic mishap. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time glows on your bedside clock. Now, dim the lights, maybe fluff your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tug a rough wool cloak tighter and step onto London Bridge just as the city yawns awake. The bridge is no modest crossing, it's an entire street of crooked timber shops, balanced over water that slaps the stone piers below. Fishwives clang cleavers against cod spines, flakes of ice and silver scale glittering like confetti in the lantern glow. A brewer trundles malt barrels through straw-soaked puddles, each slosh perfuming the mist with warm grain. You dodge a dray cart, then linger to eavesdrop on a French haberdasher haggling with a Flemish cloth merchant, every rolled R and clipped vowel ripe for recycling into tomorrow's dialogue. The air tastes of river mud, laced with pepper, as a Lombard grocer cracks open a fresh crate. Hunger pinches, yet breakfast must wait. Today, gossip is your first meal. A bell from St. Magnus's church tolls 6, its iron voice quivering through fog thick enough to blur rooftop chimneys into floating embers. Did you know this very bridge cradles more than 200 shops and dwellings, turning it into a miniature city suspended in midstream? Many residents pay tolls in live hens, which explains the rogue chicken flapping overhead now, wings beating a frantic tattoo. You duck instinctively, already hearing that comic thrum opening Act 1 of tonight's new comedy. Beneath the Southwark Gate, tar-blackened traitors' skulls glisten like grotesque lanterns. You avert your gaze, not from squeamishness of course, you are simply preserving creative appetite. The archway yawns and London seems to loosen its corset. Lanes broaden, the clang softens, and the smell of wet straw yields to tavern hearth smoke. The innkeeper of the White Hart sweeps last night's sawdust into tidy dunes, and spotting you mouths, "Matinee crowd?" 2 raised fingers confirm your hopes for brisk trade. Before turning north again, you linger at a fish stall, where a swordfish's snout juts like an accidental jousting lance. The vendor, an old woman with arms like anchor ropes, boasts that her grandson hauled it from the estuary at midnight. You grin, secretly bottling her rolling vowels for a swaggering sea captain someday. Feigning interest, you haggle for a tiny herring, really stretching the tail so you can harvest each briny idiom. From your sleeve flutters a scrap of parchment, frayed edge, cramped margin. You scrawl, Sea Queen, bragging of midnight beasts, though the ink beads in the cold and smudges under your thumb. No matter. Half your best lines begin life as stains. As you tuck the note away, morning light catches the swordfish's rostrum, and you picture it repurposed as a dueling foil on stage. The idea puts a jaunty spring in your step as you leave the bridge. Your real destination lies across the water in Bishopsgate, where yesterday's pages hang drying in a scrivener's loft. Paper ranks, just below diamonds in price, so each sheet travels under strict guard. You weave past a fiddler testing a bright new tune, only 3 notes, yet already the skeleton of a lovesick motif hums in your ear. Inspiration clings like wood smoke in wool. There's no shrugging it off. A Moorish peddler spreads glass beads on a felt square, each orb trapping dawn's blush. You buy 1 cobalt bead, claiming it for luck, but truly testing how exotic sparkle might catch candlelight on stage. The respectful hush between you plants a seed for a dignified attendant in some future history. Turning into a narrower lane, you skirt a puddle, equal parts rain and horse droppings. Nothing screams realism like London gutters in spring. A boy chases a mangy dog carrying half a loaf. His laughter rings brighter than any bell, the loaf drops, apples scatter, and chaos ripples outward. Instant comedic gold, greedily pocketed for Act 1. At last you reach the leaning lodging house, whose timbers resemble tired elbows. Inside, stairs twist like a corkscrew, and every breath puffs white in unheated air. Your landlady, Mistress Pritchard, dozes by the hearth, her keyring chiming a warning that rent is due. You glide past, up to the cramped chamber where a bouquet of quills waits in an earthen cup. Wax droplets dot the desk like frozen tears, and yesterday's pages bear scorched speckles where taper ash fell, yet the words still breathe. You hang your cloak, flex ink-stiff fingers, and regard the parchment stack, raw clay, ready for shaping. Outside, that escaped hen screeches a ragged coda from a rooftop gutter, reminding you that in this city, even poultry finds a stage. Dawn is barely hatched, and you've already harvested a menagerie of sounds, smells, and quicksilver images to keep tonight's verse alive. And if fortune smiles, push the ledger one whispered inch closer to solvency. The chamber's shutters creak open just wide enough to let in a sliver of pewter daylight, painting a cold stripe across the uneven floorboards. You rub sleep-glued eyes. No proper rest has passed, of course. You only nodded over the parchment like a barn owl guarding hatchlings, and shuffle toward the small hearth where last night's embers sulk beneath grey ash. A swift poke with the iron and a puff on the coals, and the fire decides to behave, sending up a reluctant orange sigh that warms your shins. Your landlady, Mistress Pritchard, appears precisely on that sigh, brandishing a trencher stacked with crusty bread, a curled wedge of Cheshire cheese, and, naturally, a pint of small ale, still frothing at the brim. Her keyring jingles accusatorily with every step. She sets the trencher on your writing desk, half on, half off, testing gravity's loyalty, and folds her arms beneath a shawl speckled with flour from this morning's baking. "Well now," she begins, voice like gravel in honey. "'Tis Thursday, or so the calendar claims, and Thursday's purse feels light again, Master SHAKESPEARE." She never pronounces your name the same way twice, which makes you suspect she charges by syllable. You raise the ale in a mock toast. "Fortune is fashionably late," you reply, meaning coins, patrons, and inspiration alike. Her eyebrows stage a duel with her hairline. You slice cheese with a quill knife, an implement meant for feather tips, yet pressed into dairy duty because cutlery counts as a luxury. The cheese sweats gently in the hearth heat, releasing a salty aroma that mingles with oaky smoke. You pair each bite with bread, tough enough to defend itself, washing it down with ale whose fizz tickles the back of your throat. Did you know most Londoners of your era drink ale from sunrise because river water carries more suspicious creatures than a court mask? Even children sip the weak brew, which explains why the city hums with perpetual cheer and perpetual headaches. Mistress Pritchard eyes the parchment stack drying beside the window. "All that scratching and smudging," she says, "yet no duke arrives bearing purse strings." You counter that dukes rarely frequent Bishopsgate before noon. They prefer to appear just as creditors doze. She snorts, but amusement glints in her eyes. Rent disputes with you have become her morning theatre, tickets priced at a smile and a slice of cheese. You gesture grandly toward the pages. "Behold, madam, the very bricks of a new playhouse wall, words mortared with ink. Investors will queue like starlings once they hear Act 3. She pretends to count invisible birds on her fingers. I dare hope those starlings carry coins tied to their claws. A tap at the door interrupts. It's young Tom Quine, an errand lad with hair like duckweed and a grin stuck permanently ajar. He hands you a folded note sealed in cheap wax. Opening it, you scan the hurried scrawl from Burbage. Rehearsal advanced an hour. A new actor's forgotten half his cues. Please arrive early, quills blazing. You tuck the note under a pewter candlestick and turn back to Mistress Pritchard, who is now testing the bread crust for structural integrity with a thimble knock. She looks up. "Bad news?" "Only the usual," you answer. Actors threatening mutiny over missing commas. She rolls her eyes skyward, as if searching for divine patience. Then, in a softer tone, she nods at your copy of Holinshed's Chronicles resting on the windowsill. "When I was a girl," she says, "we told tales of King Henry that'd curl your hair straighter than goose feathers. Why not script those and make the courtlings weep?" You smile at the suggestion. One day, perhaps Henry's court will indeed parade upon your stage. But for now, you must coax coins from comedy rather than coronations. The shutters rattle, struck by a gust heavy with chimney soot. You rise, scraping the stool back, and peer into the lane below. Cobblers shout greetings. A maid flaps linens like surrendered flags. The escaped hen from earlier struts victorious atop a barrel, too smart to be recaptured. You tip an imaginary hat. She has earned her cameo. Behind you, Mistress Pritchard clears her throat with theatrical resonance. Speaking of earned, Master Shakespeare, this week's tally, you hold up a finger, then pluck from your satchel a slender bundle of half-crowns wrapped in parchment. Her expression melts from thundercloud to cautious dawn. Advance from a sympathetic patron, you explain, truth adjacent to fiction. Inside, you promise to beg Burbage for that advance before nightfall. For now, illusion buys peace. And breakfast. Coins clink into her palm. She weighs them like a merchant appraising spices, then pockets them with a satisfied nod. A good omen, she declares. Perhaps fortune only naps after all. She starts toward the door but pauses. I baked seed cake for supper, she adds, almost shy. If you rehearse late, mind you tuck into a slice. Such tenderness catches you off guard. You thank her, genuine warmth drowning sarcasm. She departs, leaving hearth crackles and the faint scent of yeast behind. You take another draught of ale, letting the mild buzz smudge the edges of morning anxiety. Through the window, the tower's distant weather vane squeals, pointing east where clouds bruise purple. Your thoughts drift to the globe rising across the water, its timber frame like a bear pit awaiting a roar of groundlings. Historians still argue whether you truly lodged in Bishopsgate these particular years, or resided closer to the playhouse. But here, in this chilly room, the debate feels moot. What matters is the quill in your fingers and the hush before the next line lands. Settling at the desk, you push crumbs aside and unroll a fresh sheet. The ink, warmed by hearthlight, flows obediently. You capture Mistress Pritchard's rent speech almost verbatim. Rename her mistress quickly, grant her sharper elbows, and let future audiences recognize the melody of real life, disguised only by a stage lantern's glow. Outside, bells bong 7, metal meeting morning with earnest conviction. Time to tug boots over weary feet. You douse the candle, pull your cloak tight, and stash pages inside a leather folio, mindful of drizzle threatening the sky. The moment you step into the lane, the world expands again. Horses snort plumes of steam, a fiddler repeats the lovesick riff you catalogued earlier, and far off, a vendor hawks roasted chestnuts, their popped skins sending sweet smoke curling between rooftops. With folio tucked under arm and rent temporarily appeased, you set off toward the bridge, rehearsing lines under your breath. The ale sits warm in your belly, the cheese fortifies your resolve, and every cobblestone seems to tap out iambic pentameter beneath your soles. Above, the escaped hen crows triumphantly, life's reminder that the greatest drama sometimes feathers itself in the simplest flight. Puddles wink under your boots as you thread back across London Bridge, folio hugged tight against your ribs like a nervous rabbit. The morning wind has teeth, yet the buzz of ale and a head full of half-finished jokes keep you warmer than any cloak lining. By the time you reach the Southwark Bank, the sun has climbed just high enough to illuminate the globe's half-finished stains. Tar streaks here, sawdust freckles there, making the round playhouse look like a pie still cooling on the windowsill of the Thames. Inside, the familiar tang of oak beams, drying paint, and yesterday's sweat greets you like family, boisterous, unwashed family. You duck through a side door and ascend a creaking ladder to a cramped garret that doubles as the theatre's writing loft. A single diamond-shaped window filters dusty gold light onto an equally dusty table, scattered with quill shafts, dull penknives, and a pewter inkwell that resembles a squat toad. You set your folio down, exhale, and roll your shoulders. Time to sharpen both wits and feathers. First, the ritual. Choose a quill. Goose, raven, or, for special lines, swan. You finger the pile until one snowy goose feather feels right. Pliable spine, fine barbs. You draw the penknife, blade nicked from trimming too many metaphors, and slice a clean angle into the tip, scraping the inner pith until the point looks mean enough to dual commas. Shavings flutter like tiny curls of parchment to the floor. You test the nib in a margin, the ink blooming into a crisp hairline. Satisfied, you whisper, "Welcome to the stage, good sir." Beneath your breath, you hum the fiddler's lovesick riff, letting the melody steer meter. Today's task is twofold. Polish a scene for Much Ado, those commas Burbage moans about, and, because inspiration nips at your heels, crank out a fresh sonnet, partly to woo patrons, partly to tease yourself. You dip the quill and words begin to cue on the paper like groundlings at the penny gate. You jot a line, scratch it out, try again, grin. Pun after pun cascades, some brilliant, some destined for the scrap pile. One over-earnest couplet reads, "Thy breath as fragrant as fishmonger's wharf, yet sweeter still when cloaked in morning snore." You laugh aloud. No stage would survive the stench of that metaphor. Into the margins it goes. A new image surfaces. Mistress Pritchard's bread knock, reimagined as a lover's heartbeat. Not half bad. You keep it outside the garret. Hammers echo as carpenters mend a splintered trapdoor, each thud lending percussion to your iambs. Down below, some poor apprentice rehearses, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt," though he delivers it with the gusto of a man requesting cabbage. You sigh. Hamlet will need rewiring if that's the voice to carry him. Still, you poach the apprentice's misplaced emphasis, filing it under comic relief, Act 2. A soft rap on the doorframe breaks the tempo. It's John Hemming, stage manager, balancing a tray of stale rolls and a small jug of watered wine. The Globe's idea of a continental breakfast. "Fortify yourself," he murmurs. "Actors are assembling and the dog is back." You arch an eyebrow. "The same dog? The very one who stole the skull prop yesterday." You promise you'll tame both dog and blank verse before noon. Hemming departs and you sip a thin stream of wine, its vinegary bite clearing the fog behind your eyes. Quill poised, you dive into a manic scribble, repartee between Benedict and Beatrice about weddings being chicken coops for foolish hens. Yes, that runaway Bishopsgate hen finally earns a cameo. You even grant her an exit line. Cluck, and all's well. Somewhere, audiences will cackle into their pies. Did you know that serious writers of your age treat quill selection almost like alchemy? Goose for everyday prose, crow for darker moods, swan reserved for grand dedications to earls whose purses jingle louder than applause. Some scribes even soak feathers in alum water overnight to stiffen them, though you prefer your pens pliant, less prone to snap mid-soliloquy. You muse on this trivia as you swap to a darker raven quill for a quick scratch at a villain's monologue, the ink bleeding richer, almost theatrical. Your fingers soon peppered with India black stains, you pause to stretch. Through the slats of the garret floor you spy Burbage below, arms windmilling as he demonstrates a sword flourish. The wayward dog, a shaggy mutt with ambition in his eyes, loops around actors' ankles, playing keep away with a rag. A thought strikes, a jest about dogs knowing better plots than playwrights. You scribble it down. The groundlings adore canine chaos. Ink dwindles. You unstop the toad-shaped inkwell, only to find a desert within. Scavenging, you pour dregs from abandoned pots, swirling them into a murky cocktail. The colour sits between midnight and muddy Thames, but it flows. So who complains? Lines finalise, woodblocks of dialogue clicking into place. You leap to your feet, fanning the fresh sheets near the window. A stray sunbeam lands upon the words, making them glow like stained glass. Satisfaction hums through your bones. Perhaps even Mistress Pritchard's ledger would envy these margins tonight. A bell clangs in the yard, summoning all to the stage. You stack your pages, wrap them in oilskin. Storm clouds creep over Blackfriars and descend the ladder. Sawdust swirls in your wake, scent of pine painting every breath. Actors crane necks toward you, expecting last-minute salvation from forgotten cues. You oblige with a theatrical bow. But just before you step into the rehearsal fray, you can't resist one final flourish. You tuck the new sonnet behind a pillar, addressed in looping hand. To the most discerning eye that chances to find me. Maybe tomorrow, an eager carpenter or curious groundling will discover it, ponder the words, and feel the quiet thrill of intimacy with ink. Art, you remind yourself, is mischief draped in velvet. With quills sheathed, jokes primed, and pockets humming with secret lines, you stride onto the oak floorboards. Above, the ravens perched on the theatre's rafters resettle, feathers rustling like turning pages. The play, your life's unruly child, waits to be coaxed into order. You tap the bundle of pages against your palm, call for silence, and let the rehearsal storm begin. Rehearsal begins, as always, with a thud, loud enough to scare pigeons from the thatch. You step onto the Globe's stage and nearly collide with a carpenter, dragging a plank the size of a royal decree. Sawdust bursts around your ankles. You cough, wave it off, and press your precious bundle of pages to your chest, as if shielding them from artillery fire. An apprentice scampers past you, chasing the infamous shaggy dog. Today, the beast has upgraded from stealing rag props to triumphantly parading Hamlet's papier-mâché skull between his jaws. So much for Yorick's dignity. "Hold, you four-legged thief!" cries Will Kemp, already half in character, half in terror. The crowd will think the dog funnier than he is. Groundlings who've paid a penny to watch the rehearsal laugh from the yard, an unofficial perk if you arrive early enough and pretend to sweep. The mutt leaps over a coil of rope, skull rattling like a maraca, then darts straight under your cloak. You freeze, all eyes swing toward you, expecting playwright wizardry. With the grand flourish of a travelling magician, you kneel, produce a crust of Mistress Pritchard's bread from your pocket, and lure the dog out. A swap is negotiated, bread for skull. He drops the papier-mâché with a slobbery plop, gobbles the bread, and ambles off, tail high, as a victory pennant. Kemp bows to you. "Saved by stale crumbs," he whispers. "I owe you my grave." You retort, "Only if you die on cue." Scripts are circulated. Fresh copies scrawled by a shaky scribe who misspelled honour as onion throughout Act 2. Burbage reads the first correction aloud. "To die, to sleep, perchance to onion." Laughter detonates. Even the ravens seem to cackle. You scratch a note. Possible pun for tavern scene. The actors fan out, forming loose circles beneath the awning. Some stretch arms, others recite lines into knuckles like children whispering secrets to apples. You climb a short stepladder to the tiring house balcony, perch above them, and unroll your own master script, ready to referee vowels and egos alike. First cue, Beatrice's entrance in Much Ado. The actress, a lanky boy with freckles sprinkled like nutmeg, sweeps in, promptly trips on a sandbag, and recovers with a pirouette that would make Queen Elizabeth clutch her ruff in second-hand embarrassment. You call down gently, "Less swan, more sparrow, Jack. Beatrice is quick, not airborne." Jack salutes with 2 fingers and tries again, this time delivering her line with the clipped wit of Mistress Pritchard demanding rent. Much better. Burbage, meanwhile, insists on rehearsing a brand new flourish for Benedick, a half-bow followed by an exaggerated hip-cock. You suspect this is less about characterization and more about showing off calves honed on fencing practice. Still, you let him, scribbling a margin note. Calves equals audience bait. Thunder rumbles outside. A low growl that shivers the stage ropes. Somebody snuffs a guttering torch. The dim light now frets across sweating foreheads and the dog's newly christened throne. An empty crate stage left commandeered. The beast watches the humans, tongue lolling, clearly convinced this play is his. Lines begin to crumble like week-old shortbread. Kemp forgets a pun and fills the space with improvised jig steps. A gallant rapier fight devolves into broomstick fencing when the weapons master discovers both foils have gone missing. Probably borrowed by lads in the yard practicing heroics. You descend from the balcony, pull quill from sleeve, and start revising on the fly. Fewer sword clashes, more verbal sparring, cheaper, safer, and frankly louder under a thatched roof. One corner of the stage drips where the rain sneaks through loose thatch. A stagehand places chamber pots to catch droplets, each plink punctuating dialogue. You decide to incorporate the sound. Benedick will liken love's doubts to rain that fills the house with silver plinks of doubt. You jot the metaphor, pleased at how inconvenience breeds poetry. Did you know early Globe actors often rehearsed only once, sometimes twice, before performing for paying audiences? Memorization relied on cue scripts, rolled parchments showing only an actor's lines and the 3 or 4 words preceding each. Full scripts stayed in the playwright's pocket to guard against rival companies. You smirk at the thought that even now, your stuffed folio is the theatre's crown jewel, protected by dog slobber and ale stains. Halftime. Hemming signals for a brief rest. Groundlings stretch. You retreat to the tiring house, a cramped chamber bright with grease-painted masks and the unmistakable aroma of shared tunics. You share a stool with the skull, now toweling off. While Burbage guzzles watered ale, you tease him. If Hamlet's grief echoes onion, remember to weep accordingly. He snorts into his cup. Historians still argue whether audiences prefer tragedy weeping or laughter's balm. He muses. You nod, thinking of tomorrow's crowd, potters, courtiers, pickpockets, each chasing respite from the real plague, taxes or heartbreak. Break ends, chaos resumes. The mutt resurfaces, chasing a cat this time. Both vanish beneath the galleries, upending benches, shrieks following like stage directions written in invisible ink. You roll with it, inserting a spontaneous dog chase aside. Benedict glancing stage left, quipping that wit and terriers hunt alike. Both nip ankles until sense runs off. The actors laugh. You keep the line. Rain intensifies, drumming the thatch in triplets. A warp of lightning cracks, illuminating the stage like celestial spotlight. Jack flinches. Burbage puffs chest. He enjoys thunder as Gratty's sound effect. You fear for soggy parchment. Hemming directs boys to close shutters. Darkness crouches. Torches hiss alive again, throwing long shadows. In their flicker, you spy an opportunity. A silhouette gag. You reorganize blocking so Beatrice and Benedict's playful argument casts dueling profiles on the back drape. The groundlings, unused to shadow theatre, will gasp. You note it. Feet ache. Ink stains multiply. But at last lines click. Fight beats coordinate. Skull sits obediently on a props table beside its canine conqueror, now asleep. You whistle a final cadence. Actors freeze mid-gesture, then dismiss them for a noon meal of pottage and pride. Hushed applause from the yard acknowledges the miracle of near order wrested from mayhem. You stay behind to collect stray pages. One sheet flutters face down in a puddle. Jack's cue script, letters bleeding like waterlogged secrets. You rescue it, lay it on a dry bench, and promise to re-ink the smudged words before dusk. These children of your quill deserve clean faces. When the theatre empties, you sit on the edge of the stage, legs dangling over the pit. Rain tapers to a quiet patter. The mutt snores beneath the benches, perhaps dreaming of fresh bread and louder applause. You inhale the mingled scents of oak, sweat, and distant river mud. Despite chaos, or because of it, you feel the day's heartbeat aligning to the rhythm of polished verse. There is still midday ale to chase, gossip to milk, and royal rumours to harvest. But for one lingering minute, you let satisfaction settle like calm dust on sore-scarred boards. You leave the globe, just as church bells toll one, their bronze clang echoing across slate rooftops and mingling with the hush that follows heavy rain. The Thames has settled into a mirror, reflecting pewter clouds and the reed-rimmed barges that loiter like half-finished couplets. Boots squelch through puddled mud while you tuck the rehearsal script deep inside your cloak. Time to court your second muse of the day, ale, and the barrel-chested printer who pours it. The Bear and Boar Tavern sits a stone's throw from the print shops along St. Paul's churchyard, its crooked signboard creaking above a doorway forever exhaling yeast-sweet breath. Inside, rushes on the floor squish underfoot, already perfumed with spilled drink, roast grease, and hints of lavender someone optimistically scattered at dawn. Lanterns hang low, they cast an amber hush that instantly soothes the tension strung in your shoulders like overwound lute strings. At the back, beneath a tapestry depicting Arthurian knights suspiciously clutching tankards, waits your friend and occasional accomplice in exaggeration, Master Elif, one of London's faster presses and slower drinkers. He waves you over with an ink-stained thumb, other hand guarding 2 pints of nut-brown ale balanced on a warped pewter tray. You slide onto the bench opposite, letting cloak steam dry by the hearth, while Elif's beard crackles with flecks of dried lampblack. "Fresh from the Globe?" he asks, sliding your pint closer. "Fresher than Yorick's skull after the dog's baptism," you quip, and he chortles deep enough to stir the foam. Tankards meet with muted thunk, and the first swallow sends warm barley comfort marching down your chest. Elif produces a narrow proof sheet, today's handbill mocked up for tomorrow's performance. Crude woodcut of a jester in mid-cartwheel and the title, "Much Ado About Nothing," spelled correctly for once. But the tagline beneath reads, "A merry war of words, wits and onions." You groan. "The scribe really kept that typo," you mutter. He shrugs. "Onions catch the eye, my friend. People remember onions. Maybe buy them on the way home." You fish a sharpened nub of charcoal from your pouch and scratch through onions, scribbling honours in its place. You also tweak the billing order, nudging Burbage's name 1 line lower to match his dwindling patience for rehearsal. Elif watches, amused. "Ever the puppet master." You shrug. Strings must be tuned as well as plucked. A buxom serving girl deposits a dish of salt beef pasty between you. Steam curls upward, carrying pepper and suet. Crust flakes under your fingertips, and you dunk a morsel into mustard as sharp as Eilif's wit. Between chews you trade rumours, whispers of a new sumptuary law tightening colour codes for sleeves. Tale of a Spanish galleon seized at Plymouth bursting with cacao beans none know how to brew. Gossip that Lord Southampton might fund a court performance if a flattering sonnet were to conveniently reach his pillow. Your ears prick like hunting hounds, every snippet potential mortar for tomorrow's blank verse. Speaking of sonnets, Eilif says, lowering his voice, I've a nobleman wanting discreet verses, lovesick, naturally, thinks his lady's curls outshine dawn. He rolls eyes skyward at the cliché. You grin. Flattery's coin never tarnishes. Send him my rates. Codpiece compliments cost extra. Ale loosens syllables, and soon pages of your folio sprawl across the table like a map of misbehaving islands. You and Eilif read aloud contentious couplets, tweaking stressed beats here, trimming a dangling article there. He marks each revision on a clean proof with rapid strokes, the wet ink flashing oily rainbows in torchlight. Did you know many printers guard their fastest typesetters by feeding them ale mixed with raw eggs, claiming the concoction steadies hands for swift compositing? Eilif swears by it, though today he sticks to plain brew, explaining he's out of hens and courage. You chuckle, imagining your runaway Bishopsgate hen pressed into kitchen service. A shout erupts at the doorway, two scriveners arguing over who first coined a bawdy limerick now circulating the Inns of Court. You and Eilif exchange a look. Limericks feel like mischievous seedlings from Kemp's after-hour jests. Eilif jots the rhyme's opening line on a scrap, filing it for a future broadside where quick pennies grow. Mid-conversation, Eilif pulls a slender ledger and flips to a page bracketed with accounts. Paper prices climbing again, he sighs. Rag collectors blame plague quarantine. Fewer linens tossed out when folk nurse kin at home. You wince. Smaller print runs mean fewer playbills fluttering through London's streets, and smaller pay packets. We may have to share verses on half-sheets soon, he says. At which point you answer, I shall start writing half-plays. The jest earns a weary grin. A log pops in the hearth, sparks tracing lazy arcs upward. You feel the first afternoon drowse slide behind your eyelids, heavy as velvet drapes. But pages await smoothing, so you sit upright, glug water to sober the tongue, and pore over Act 3's quarrel scene. Eilif suggests swapping two lines, placing Beatrice's sharper retort last so the laugh lands harder. You test it aloud. The cadence clicks, comedic timing snapping like a well-oiled hinge. Change accepted. Outside, a muffled racket of hooves and wheels hints that the rain delay has ended, and commerce surges back to its daily gallop. Through the leaded window you glimpse apprentices loading printed pamphlets onto a barrow, each sheet fluttering like captured moths. If fortune smiles, tomorrow your revised handbills will join that restless flock, sailing across tavern walls, inboards, and maybe even palace corridors. Eilif drains his pint and signals for another, but you wave him off. If I drown my quill in ale, tonight's performance will slur itself. You gather folio and clean proofs, sliding them into a leather wallet slick with lamp-black fingerprints. He stands, grips your shoulder. Bring the house down, but gently, aye. You promise, handing him the corrected copy. Set it in type by dusk, and I'll owe you a sonnet praising egg ale miracles. You step outside into crisp air tinged with chimney smoke and printer's ink, a scent equal parts industry and imagination. Clouds part just enough to let a weak sun bleed through, spotlighting St. Paul's dome. Pigeons burst skyward at a sudden bell toll. You tuck cloak tighter, pages safe beneath, and wheel toward the Thames stairs, where a wherry will ferry you back to Southwark. Boots click down stone steps slick with moss, each tap echoing the iambic pulse still drumming in your head. Halfway down, you pause, savouring the simple satisfaction of smoothed verse, fresh gossip, and the steady warmth of midday ale. Plays may be chaos, actors unruly, dogs unpredictable, but the steady thrum of words, tuned, trimmed and ready, feels like a mast you can lash yourself to when London's storms rise. A boatman hails, and you climb aboard, settling on a damp bench. Oars cut the water with slow, rhythmic swishes. Across the river, the globe's timbers lurk like a waiting colossus, hungry for laughter. You breathe deep, tasting salt, wood smoke, and a faint hint of onions. Honours, you correct yourself, though perhaps the groundlings won't mind a tear or two. With that thought, and the boat's lullaby rolling under your spine, you close your eyes for one steadying heartbeat before the next act of the day begins. The wherry noses against the Southwark stairs with a hollow thump, and you hop ashore, cloak whipping like a pennant in the upriver breeze. Between the river's brine and the settling musk of low-tide silt, you catch a sharper fragrance. Clove pomanders and rose attar, unmistakably courtly. The scent clings to two liveried messengers striding up the steps ahead of you, ribbons fluttering from their hats, wax-sealed packets tucked under arms as though the parchments might detonate if jostled. Instinct sparks. Wherever gossip travels, a playwright should tail it like a cat after a cream cart. You fall in behind them, boots echoing through a covered arcade of spice stalls and print booths. The pair stop at the anchor's private parlour, wave a signet ring, and vanish inside. No invitation for you, yet. Undeterred, you slip through the public tap room and plant yourself at the thin wall dividing commoners from conspirators. A viol player leagues away scrapes an airy tune that mingles with gossip's muffled murmur beyond the oak planks. You order watered wine, clear enough to keep your wits, and fiddle with a loose timber knot until a peephole the size of a farthing appears. The world rewards persistence. Candlelit silhouettes lean close over a table, voices crisp as orchard apples. The Queen's physician insists Her Majesty has taken to moonlight walks, one messenger whispers, and Lord Essex claims she composes secret verses to match Shakespeare's, the other replies, half snorting. Your pulse quickens, a monarch tempted by poetry and moonlit melancholy, that stage gold still warm from the mint. You scribble the image on a scrap, adding a jest. If royalty pens couplets, poets may as well mend socks. Conversation shifts. A fresh rumour floats. The fleet's pay chests running dry, and courtiers debating whether to levy a new pearl tax on the gentry's lapdogs. Yes, taxing dog collars. You suppress laughter so hard your shoulders judder. The scrap grows busier. Lapdog tax becomes a subplot for Dogberry, naturally. Tankards clink behind you as sailors file in, rain-slick and rowdy. To disguise your espionage, you pivot on the bench, joining their circle as if summoned. One mariner eyes your ink-blotched fingers. "Scholar or soothsayer?" he asks. You grin. "A bit of both if ale flows." He laughs and slaps your back hard enough to rattle vertebrae, then regales the table with news of Cadiz. A Spanish powder store gone up in smoke so bright, he claims, that dolphins leapt clear of the bay in terror. You net the tale. Its plume of fire perfect fodder for a messenger's speech in Henry V.5 someday. The sailors order eel pies. You pick at a crust while mentally threading tonight's revisions. A moon-haunted queen, lapdog levies, dolphins fleeing cannon thunder. The room spins delicious possibilities. Did you know? Elizabeth's court actually kept a menagerie of misrule. Every 12th night, where noblemen dressed as exotic beasts and the Queen delighted in guessing identities. You tuck this morsel beside your dolphin anecdote. One never knows when a masquerade of lions and peacocks might stroll across a future stage. At last the messengers exit their parlour, headed north. You settle your tab and trail them to a bookseller's stall near the cathedral gate. They purchase a folio of Petrarch's sonnets, Italian love knots destined, you deduce, for royal bedside reading. As they depart, you thumb a battered pocket Latin primer, half pretending to shop, half parsing implications. If Elizabeth recites Petrarch beneath bed curtains, audiences will thrill at a heroine who does the same. While pondering, you spot a slim figure in plum-coloured doublet leaning against a pillar. Thomas Nash, pamphleteer and mischief-monger extraordinaire. He beckons you with 2 fingers stained ochre by cheap ink. "Word on the cobbles," he says, "is that Essex wants a history play flattering ancient war heroes, subtle as a boot to the face, to buff his own reputation." Nash smirks. "I'd write it, but he still owes me for a sonnet comparing his moustache to Phoebus's mustachioed sunbeams." You promise to consider the commission. Anything that keeps a roof over quills. Nash slides closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial ember. "Also heard whispers that Lord Cecil's spies frequent your galleries tonight. They tally any jest that smells treasonous." A thrill flits down your spine. Dangerous, but danger sells tickets. You clap his shoulder, thank him, and stride off toward the globe, ideas crowding your skull like excited groundlings. Crossing back through the theatre's stage door, you find the afternoon hush replaced by clamoring carpenters and the wet dog scent of the mutt, recently shampooed with lye soap by an overzealous apprentice who now sports claw marks. You laugh, then tuck yourself into the tiring house corner, quill ready for round 2. Scene sheets unfurl across a crate. You strike through a bland courtier's entrance, replacing it with a torchlit procession of tiny lapdogs in pearl collars, each carried by a fool lamenting the new tax. Comic relief that cuts close to truth. You follow with a moon-drenched soliloquy for your heroine, musing on royal loneliness amid clove-perfumed corridors. The words flow like warmed honey, your earlier eavesdropping crystallizing into iambic heartbeat. Ink scratches steady until dusk brushes the window slats in bruised violet. Hemming pokes his head in, brow knitted. "More changes?" You hand him the fresh pages. Just a glimmer of moonlight and a barking purse. He scans a line, chuckles. "Groundlings will howl." Then, softer, he adds, "Historians still argue whether politics writes plays or plays rewrite politics. Tonight we'll test both." You nod, secretly thrilled to sit in that intersection where fiction and power bargain with each other like wary traders over a spice crate. Torches hiss to life beyond the curtain. The mutt, still damp but proud, trots past clasping a silken bow newly gifted by a costume mistress. Even the dog, it seems, now sports taxable finery. You tousle his ears, an improvised blessing. As footlights glow, you tuck the quill behind your ear and pocket a fresh scrap of blank parchment, always hunting the next rumour. The bell clangs 3 sharp warnings. Audience ready. You exhale, tasting clove, ale memory and river damp. Rumours have ripened into dialogue. Scandal has slipped into satire. Whether courtiers recognise themselves or merely their lapdogs, the stage is set, the moon is high, and your words wait to leap like dolphins from powder-lit seas. Dusk bleeds into night with a bruised flourish, and the globe's lanterns flare like anxious fireflies, jittering against the low, glowering clouds that have stalked London all afternoon. You pace the cramped wings, heart clapping faster than any applause, folding and unfolding a final page of cues while the actors assemble behind you like mismatched chess pieces eager for battle. Somewhere overhead, thunder mutters, stage-shaking baritone promising either divine punctuation or catastrophic interruption. Burbage strides past, jerkin laced tight, brushing imaginary lint from his sleeves. "Storm's nothing," he brags, though his eyes keep skittering toward the thatch roof as if expecting Noah's second draft. Jack, still Beatrice for one more evening, practices tongue-twisting insults under his breath, lungs visibly quivering. Will Kemp adjusts fake lapdog collars on 5 small boys pressed into canine service, each collar sewn with oyster shells to mimic pearls, because real pearls were commandeered by the props master and promptly pawned for cider. The dogs yip with mischievous delight. You peek through a slit in the curtain. Groundlings pack the yard shoulder to soaped shoulder, hats dripping, some clutching stale pies to their chests like treasured manuscripts. They've paid a penny for the privilege of shivering beneath nature's percussion, and they look positively giddy about it. Elite patrons squat in the galleries, silk cloaks already flecked with stray raindrops sneaking through the eaves. All eyes search the stage for escape, from taxes, from plague murmurs, from yet another dog-collar levy. You inhale, tasting damp wood, candle grease, and excitement fizzing like unbottled ale. Time. Hemming signals musicians to start. Lutes strike a jaunty prelude, thunder quick steps in answer, and the shutters rattle like maracas. You give the ropes a tug. Curtains part. Burbage bounds centre, launches into Benedict's first broadside while lightning backlights him with a celestial follow spot. The crowd erupts, half at the joke, half at the cosmic timing. Minutes later, Beatrice slings her wittiest arrow, Jack nailing the cadence. But thunder stamps on the punchline, swallowing half the syllables. Groundlings boo the sky. From the wings you whisper, project, and mime a trumpet's bell with both hands. Jack obeys, raising volume to operatic heights. The line lands, laughter ricochets off wooden beams, and suddenly rain becomes accomplice, not adversary. Midway through Act 2, the heavens open completely. Fat drops drumming the thatch, slipping through chinks, splattering stage boards. You dart forward between scenes, scattering sawdust to absorb puddles. The dog boy chorus scrambles to stay upright, oyster shell collars clacking. Improvisation reigns. Kemp turns a slippery footfall into a pratfall, rolling through a puddle, sputtering, "Rain! The very tears of Cupid lamenting my lonely boots!" The crowd roars approval. Even gallery nobles clap gloved hands. Backstage, stagehands frantically swap drenched torches, blowing on tinder that wilts in the damp. You shepherd them like magpies, insisting on flame enough to outline actors, but not enough to roast them alive. Ad-libbing from the wings, you hiss new asides. Ease the lights after Beatrice's quip. Skip the bench gag, too slick. Bring the moon backdrop early. Lightning doubles the effect. Instructions flit across stage in whispers and nods. A kinetic choreography, unseen by the audience yet steering their every gasp. The mutt, now audience favourite, chooses this sodden hour to trot on stage, tail swivelling like a weather vane chasing what remains of the storm's guts. Jack seizes the chance, kneels, and delivers an impromptu line. "Behold, even the heavens unleash hounds to fetch our truths." The dog barks as if on cue, sniffs Kemp's soppy breeches and steals a pearl oyster collar before galloping off. Groundlings cheer loud enough to rattle loose shingles, and you quietly note, add official dog entrance tomorrow. Did you know the Globe's open roof was partly a shrewd marketing choice? By leaving audiences exposed, proprietors saved on timber and simultaneously harnessed unpredictable weather as special effects. Sun for comedy, clouds for tragedy, and thunder for everything in between. Tonight the model proves foolproof. No painted backdrop could rival the real storm painting itself across the London sky. Act 3's lapdog tax scene arrives, the boys parading with exaggerated yaps, while Kemp, as Dogberry, decries levies on collars more valuable than their content. Laughter splashes like runaway rainwater, commoners delighting in a jab at nobles, nobles chortling because they assume the jest skewers their rivals. You watch Lord Essex's spy in the upper gallery scribble notes, head bobbing with reluctant amusement. Satire passed its first checkpoint. Between scenes you slip beneath the tiring house awning to reorganize soggy cue pages. Ink feathers where drops have kissed it, but words remain legible. A lantern guttering in the draft threatens to die. You shield it with your palm like a votive, mindful of fire's hunger for thatch. Outside, lightning forks again, illuminating the yard so briefly you glimpse every upturned face. Joy, fatigue, curiosity, all riveted. Moments like this taste sweeter than any patron's coin. Burbage enters for his big declaration of reluctant love. A cannon blast of thunder overlaps his first two words. Without missing a heartbeat, he bellows, "Hark! The gods applaud my confession!" The crowd howls. Thunder tucks its tail, and the speech lands flawlessly. You owe him an extra quill stroke of praise for that rescue. From the wings you flash a grin. He winks mid-monologue, ego-nourished. Rain lightens to a mere drizzle by the top of Act 5. The moon backdrop you prompted earlier now shimmers behind gauzy cloud, torches painting silver edges. Benedict and Beatrice share their final volley, voices clear, playful, ringing across rafters newly polished by the storm's rinse. Applause surges before the final line even falls. Curtain call, actors line up, dripping costumes clinging like second skins. Kemp flaunts a puddle-dripping jig, Jack curtsies with sodden grace. Burbage milks cheers until thunder growls a final encore from afar. You step forward last, offering a humble bow that serves partly to thank the audience, partly to hide your grin. Tonight's rewrite, dog chaos and skyborne percussion fused into a performance unlikely to fade from anyone's memory, including the Queen's spies. As the crowd streams out under umbrellas made of straw hats and optimism, you help extinguish torches, mindful of hiss and smoke trails. The dog curls at your feet, chomping an oyster shell cameo, proof of his pilfering prowess. An apprentice sweeps puddles off stage, forming rivulets that trickle into the yard. Rain has washed the globe clean, leaving behind the twinned scents of wet oak and spent adrenaline. Actors disperse toward taverns, but you linger, perched on a railing beneath the half-moon peeking through ragged cloud. The river beyond whispers applause of its own, tiny waves clapping the stone embankment. You exhale, feeling thunder's departing echo in your bones, and close your eyes for one suspended breath of gratitude. The play survived the storm, and the storm in turn embroidered every line with electric thread. Tomorrow, critics, if they stay dry, will praise nature's synergy with poetry, blissfully unaware of your frantic wingside improvisations. Finally, you scoop the dog under one arm, rescue the bedraggled skull with the other, and step onto the now quiet stage one last time, simply to listen to floorboards creak beneath weightless triumph. Outside these walls, Southwark hums with residual rain, but inside, the night purrs with contentment, velvety, electric, and utterly alive. Rain-damp euphoria still buzzes in your ears as you shepherd the troupe across muddy streets toward the George Inn. Lanterns bobbing ahead like glowworms guiding half-drowned moths. Actors peel away, some chasing cider, others warm beds, but you, Hemming, and Kemp veer for the smoky back room, where quills meet tankards and reputations live or die on the edge of a punchline. The signboards brag, ale fit for angels, arguments fit for devils, feels prophetic tonight. Inside, oak rafters sweat condensation and laughter in equal measure. Ben Jonson commands a bench near the hearth, one boot propped on a keg, lecturing three green poets about the moral necessity of full stops. His booming Latin quotes swirl with pipe smoke, occasionally punctuated by his own thunderous guffaw. Across from him sit two admirers of the late Kit Marlowe, cloaks trimmed with tragic velvet and opinions sharper than any rapier. You slide onto an empty stool, cloak steaming, folio tucked safe under your elbow, like a newborn you refuse to hand off. Jonson notices, raises his mug. Ah, the storm tamer joins us. What miracle of commas shall you preach tonight, Will? You offer a modest nod, then tip your tankard toward the Marlovians. Only that commas, dear Ben, know when to leave a man breathing between thoughts, unlike certain heroic couplets that charge headlong until every actor faints. The table erupts in appreciative oohs. Jonson snorts good-naturedly, admitting the hit with a slap on the barrel. A serving girl deposits trenchers piled with cheese rinds and peppered goose. Grease slicks your fingers as you tear bread, the savoury smell melding with spilt ale and wet wool. The mutt from earlier pads in, now sporting a tavern kerchief around his neck, clearly networking for supper. He parks at your feet, chin on paws, hopeful eyes mirroring torchlight. You toss him a rind. He wags approval, prompting Jonson to mutter, "Even stray curs recognise genius when they taste it." Discussion tilts inevitably toward tonight's storm-embellished triumph. Kemp reenacts his puddle pratfall, exaggerating the splash height by 3 handspans. The Marlowe men applaud the daring, though one can't resist. Marlowe would have conjured lightning on command, not waited for heaven's convenience. You grin. True, Kit always did court divinity by shortcut. They grin back, rivalry seasoned with respect for the man stabbed out of this world far too soon. You unfurl the folio, smoothing corners still damp at the edges.
Now tomorrow's curtain trick.
You begin.
Hemming worries the moon backdrop may warp in another downpour. My thought, lower the scrim mid-scene. Let torchlight project silhouettes. Paint with shadows rather than cloth.
Jonson rubs his chin, contemplating. The Marlowe pair nod, one suggesting a crimson glass in front of a lantern to tint silhouettes.
But love itself blushed.
You jot the idea, budget permitting. A shard of stained church glass might be procured by morning. Did you know, Elizabethan stages rarely used a front curtain at all. Instead, discovery scenes relied on removing handheld props or parting side wings, forcing playwrights to craft dialogue that could change location without dimming the lights. You share this tidbit aloud. Johnson raises brows as if challenged, but ultimately grunts assent, swirling ale like an hourglass. A lull invites friendly barbs. Johnson claims your addiction to commas weakens iambic potency. You counter that his disdain for punctuation forces actors to gulp air like drowning carp. Laughter ripples, tankards clink. Historians still argue whether Shakespeare truly revised plays nightly, but here and now, you defend the practice with theatrical fervour.
Plays must breathe with their audience. A joke that lives tonight may die of boredom tomorrow. We resuscitate it, or bury it in ink.
One Marlovian leans closer, voice low. There's talk of a Spanish plot brewing. Jesuit whispers near the river stairs. If it surfaces, tragedy will pay better than comedy. You log the rumour, picturing a cloak and dagger subplot for perhaps a reworked Merchant sequel. London has an appetite for fear dressed as entertainment. The dog, emboldened, hops paws on your thigh. Absent-mindedly, you scratch behind his ears while examining Johnson's latest pamphlet proofs. The margin boasts a scathing jab at straw-haired poets who rhyme love with dove. Johnson smirks.
No offence.
None taken. You lie, already plotting a dove pun so delicious even Ben will have to applaud. Voices rise, ale lowers, and soon half the company bursts into impromptu lines from Marlowe's Tamburlaine, each actor trying to outbellow the last. Thunder outside has faded, but their bombast keeps the rafters rattling. You steer the energy back. Gentlemen, if we're to outshine Cadiz explosions and lapdog taxes tomorrow, we need not thunder louder, only truer. That silences them. A moment's respectful hush as quills metaphorically poise. You produce a scrap. The moonlit Queen soliloquy drafted earlier. Reading softly over the hubbub, you unveil poignant lines about loneliness gilded by silver beams. The group falls quiet. Even Johnson's mock-stern brow softens. He claps slowly. No wasted commas there, he concedes. A bell clangs last call. Tankards empty. Johnson slings an arm around your shoulders, breath warm with nutmeg. Write your moon speech, Comma King, and tomorrow I'll come heckle from the gallery. We'll see if the groundlings swoon. They'll swoon, you assure him, and the spies will scribble. Outside, night air bites with fresh chill. Lanterns bob away down muddy lanes like distant constellations. You and Hemming trudge southward, dog-trotting sentinel. Ahead, the globe's silhouette rises, dark, patient, promising. Tomorrow will bring new gossip, new storms, and one daring shadow trick. But for now, words flutter in your mind like moths seeking candle warmth. You fish parchment from your pouch, scribble a final note beneath street lamp gloom. Shadow silhouettes through crimson glass, moon illusion. As ink dries, you sigh, satisfied, exhausted, half drunk on possibility, and turn toward Bishopsgate lodgings. Through broken cloud, a real moon peers, pale and expectant, as if rehearsing its cameo. You tip an invisible hat, whisper, break a leg, and step into the hush of sleeping streets, ready to carve tomorrow's commas from the marrow of tonight's dreams. Back in Bishopsgate, the tavern's din fades to a low echo behind your ears as you climb the inn's corkscrew staircase. Boots whisper thumping on every warped step. Mistress Pritchard's candle, left on the landing out of grudging kindness, trembles in a draught, yellowing the shadows that cling to the rafters like sleepy bats. You scoop it up, shielding the flame with ink-blotched fingers, and inch into your garret. The door creaks the way it always does, as though announcing your return to an audience of moths. Inside, the hearth is a black grin, ashes sift in the grate, but the desk waits, top spread with quills, blotter, and tonight's freshest gossip, still pulsing in your skull. You set the candle in a brass saucer, coax a stub of charcoal into the coals, and soon a ribbon of flame licks life back into the chimney. Orange light crawls across the ceiling, revealing that the runaway hen, somehow, has managed to roost on the sill, head tucked beneath wing. You decide not to disturb her. She's earned lodging more honestly than half the guests here. Cloak off, doublet loosened, you crack knuckles, roll shoulders, and slide a raven quill from its cup. The same you used for villain monologues earlier. A new sheet lies before you, edges crisp, smelling faintly of linseed and promise. First task, copy the moonlit soliloquy fair and legible for tomorrow's performance. You read it under your breath, pacing, matching syllables to the soft creak of floorboards. How sweet the night that cloisters silver sighs within her silent vault. Satisfied, you begin the fair hand, each letter prowling into place, ink shining wetly before dulling to velvet. A gust rattles the shutters, candle shadow dances. You pause, listening for voices. None, just distant cartwheels and the occasional drunken whoop from Gracechurch Street. London has exhaled its stormy breath, leaving you a hush thick enough to slice with a penknife. Perfect. You lean back, sip the last of a pewter beaker of watered wine, and reach for the pile of soggy cue pages rescued off stage. They need rebirth. Hours slip like beads on an abacus. Scratch, blot, sand, breathe, repeat. Paragraphs tighten, jokes sharpen, commas migrate into place, as if guided by invisible sheepdogs. Ink flecks your cuff. You wipe it on a scrap already tattooed with lapdog tax doodles. The mutt would approve. Mid-sentence, the candle gutter stutters, thin flame bending toward a draft. You turn to snuff the offending gap with a rag, and your elbow bumps a stack of prompt books. They tumble, dominoing across the table in a papery avalanche. One slim booklet pops open to a page splattered with violet ink, the cue sheet for Macbeth, a fellow actor left last month. Your eyes snag on a marginal note. Never speak the title in the tiring house. You chuckle, recalling the actor's terror that uttering the name outside the script. Did you know? Seasoned Elizabethan players avoided quoting any line from that particular Scottish tragedy backstage, choosing instead to call it the King's Play, or simply that piece. Legend swore a careless mention could bring collapsing scenery, mistimed trapdoors, or sudden illness. You tap the note thoughtfully, then add an asterisk. This superstition might spice tomorrow's tavern banter, a wink to those who relish backstage lore. You gather fallen booklets, and one dislodged parchment flutters free, your dog-eared note on pearl-collared lapdogs. Inspiration crackles. You seize a fresh sheet, draft a brief speech for Dogberry about taxing a tail that wags without labour, giving him a chance to parade those oyster-shell collars under lantern sparkle. Laughter will ripple like last night's puddles, quill scratches faster, words snowball, the hen stirs clucking softly, and for a heartbeat you fear she'll clatter into the candle. Instead, she hunkers down, a feathered paperweight. Your back protests, spine shaped into a question mark. But sleep must wait while wit still flares. Pages multiply, drying in tidy rows across a string above the hearth. Improvised laundry of verse. You pin each sheet with splinters of wood, admiring the gentle swish as they sway in rising heat. Under them, embers pulse, tiger striping the floor with amber bars. The hour creeps close to 2. Bells, distant and muffled by fog, mark it with hollow tolls. You flex cramped fingers, massage the quill callus at your thumb's root, and unroll the skull prop's smudge-stained entry speech. Needs punch, you decide. You cross out 3 wan phrases, replace them with a jaunty couplet about grinning afterlife merchandise. Morbid, yet oddly comforting. Ink nearly spent, you tilt the toad-shaped inkwell, coaxing the last dark drop into the nib. It forms a bead, hesitates, then plummets, splat onto the page, leaving a bruise that resembles an eclipse. Rather than blot it, you draw a delicate halo of words around the stain, transforming accident into stylistic flourish. Satisfying alchemy. Finally, brain fog thickens. You stand, joints clicking, and drift to the tiny casement. London sprawls below, rooftops shining with rain sheen under a gauzy moon. The globe's distant lanterns have gone dark, but you picture its silent stage, planks absorbing storm memories, waiting for dawn's dust sweep to ready another day of folly. Behind you, the desk lamp sputters a final warning. You pinch the wick. Darkness slides forward like a velvet curtain at closing time. The room's hush deepens, broken only by the hen's soft breathing and the dying hiss of coals. You stack the fresh pages, wrap them in waxed cloth, and nest them beside tomorrow's waistcoat. One last ritual, you pluck a stubby quill, jot a private line in the margin of your notebook, invisible to all but you. Curses live only if rehearsed, blessings likewise. A nod to superstition, a reminder to wield words thoughtfully. Notebook shut, quill down, you ease onto the straw mattress, boots unlaced but still on. Habit in case of late-night fire alarms or sudden inspiration. Through cracked shutter slats, moonlight stripes the garret, silver on parchment edges, on the hen's ruffled feathers, on your ink-black fingers now relaxed across your chest. Outside, carts rattle sleepy cobbles, and a cat yowls into alley darkness. But inside, the hearth's embers pulse steady, breathing warmth into bones and words alike. Pages whisper against each other as night air shifts, sounding almost like applause from an invisible gallery. You smile into the pillow scent of parchment dust and wood smoke. Tomorrow's audience will never know how tonight's quiet labour stitched laughter into the seams of their dreams. Sleep never settles for long in a mind still overheated by ink, and so, boots laced, cloak flung back over rumpled doublet, you ease the garret door shut behind you and descend Bishopsgate's twisting stair once more. The hallway candle is melted into a puddle of waxy petals. You borrow its smouldering wick to light your own lantern, cupping the flame until it steadies. Outside, London's lanes are glazed with thin moon sheen, quiet as a paused heartbeat. Even the escaped hen slumbers, neck corkscrewed into feathers atop a barrel. You tip a silent bow to her perseverance and step into the night. The air is knife-cool but forgiving, scented faintly of wet slate, chimney soot and something sweeter. Honeysuckle from a hidden garden uncorked by the rain. You move south past shuttered stalls where eels doze in wicker baskets and greengrocers' chalkboards promise tomorrow's turnips. Your lantern turns puddles into quicksilver, each footstep editing the reflected stars into commas and semicolons, punctuation for the sky. At Cornhill you glimpse a patrol of night watchmen gossiping over a horn lantern. Their pikes glint but they wave you on, recognizing a playwright's distracted gait, eyes fixed on horizons nobody else sees. You cross the dark ribbon of Cheapside where a single surviving candle in a haberdasher's window illuminates bolts of fustian like moonlit cliffs. A grocer's sign creaks overhead, its painted cherub half stripped by weather. Inspiration, a satirical bit-part angel perhaps, forever warning lovers about stale spices. Approaching the river you hear it before seeing it, soft clap-clap of water licking mossy steps. The Thames, silver-black tonight, breathes cold clouds that stroke your cheeks. A lone wherry rocks at its tether, oars shipped, hull bumping the quay like a patient dog begging attention. You sit on a mooring post, lantern at your boots, and let the hush enfold you. The city behind you snores in countless keys, but down here the only music is river pulse and distant, drowsy gull cries. You unroll the waxed bundle of new pages, checking edges for damp. Moonlight puddles over the fresh ink, letters glimmer like beetle shells. Satisfied, you rewrap them and tuck the parcel inside your doublet. The thought surfaces that, centuries from now, someone might claim these same pages were penned in a grand study, amid fine tapestries. Historians still argue whether Shakespeare's lines were born in exquisite solitude or hammered together under midnight street lamps. Tonight, at least, the evidence drips Thames water and smells of eel stalls. A ripple draws your gaze. A shoal of tiny fish flickers beneath the surface, disturbed by the incoming tide. Did you know? London's lunar-pulled tides can rise 7 feet between bell tolls, enough to strand wherries high on slipways if a boatman misjudges his beer or his arithmetic. Lantern guttering, you stand and stroll east along the bank. Globe timbers loom ahead, dark as a closed shell. You picture tomorrow's crimson glass silhouette trick. The boys' faux pearl collars, the moon speech ready to cut the hush like a satin ribbon. Satisfaction warms you from collarbone to soles. Somewhere a church clock stutters 3, its iron tongue dull with fatigue. Around a bend, the tower hunches, torchlit ramparts brooding. For once you resist stealing atmosphere. Let the stones keep their secrets tonight. A final gust snuffs your lantern. Rather than relight it, you pocket the stub and walk by raw moonglow alone, senses sharpening. cobble grit under heel, faint yeast waft from distant bakeries. The way mist beads on eyelashes until each blink writes tiny constellations. Thoughts slacken, words slow. The day's frantic script revisions wane to a heartbeat-steady tempo, and your breath drifts white in the gloom like a line break. At the foot of London Bridge you pause, palms on cool parapet. The bridge's timber shops are shuttered, no fishmongers, no Lombard grocers, only the whisper of rats debating leftovers. The river's broader here, reflecting moonlit arrow slits between arches. You watch a lethargic barge ghost by, its ferryman hunched in sleep, pole trailing wake scribbles that erase themselves before they can be read. So much for permanence, you muse. Perhaps all writing is this, brief grooves on water, seen only until the tide rewrites. Still, you pat your doublet where the fresh pages rest. Some grooves last longer than others. A yawn creeps up from boots to jaw. Body reminds mind that dawn will arrive wearing creditors' faces. You pivot, climbing narrow bridge stairs, and retrace the labyrinth of lanes back to Bishopsgate. A lamp at a mercer's door flickers as you pass, as if nodding approval. And somewhere a nightlark sings 3 tentative notes, then thinks better of it. At last your lodging roof appears, shingles glinting dimly. Inside the hen has not moved. Perhaps she dreams of endless seed cake. You hang cloak on a peg, slide pages beneath the mattress for safekeeping, and slip boots off with practiced toe hooks. Straw mattress sighs as you settle. Through shutters the moon angle has shifted, gentling every edge of the room into soft pewters. You pull blanket to chin, inhaling faint smoke, quill dust, and a surprising echo of honeysuckle carried back on your sleeves. Your pulse slows, eyelids thicken, river sounds linger in memory like lullaby. With a final mental note to buy crimson glass at dawn, you surrender to darkness, letting London's hush wrap round your tired thoughts like a playhouse curtain at last call. The streets grow still, softer than parchment left to curl beside a dying hearth. Any distant footsteps have melted into the velvet hush, and the river's hush has gentled into a slow, even breathing, almost your own, only wider, deeper, endless. Lanterns are dark now, their last sparks drifting upward like tired fireflies finding pillows among the stars. Roofs nestle under dew-silver blankets, while shop signs sway with lazy creaks that feel more like yawns than noise. Feel the cool night settle over your shoulders, smoothing every crease of the day. Inhale once, letting the air glide into your chest. Pause there like a kindly stage prompt. Then exhale longer, slower, sending away the last echo of applause, the final, unfinished joke. As you lie back, imagine the Thames sliding beneath London Bridge, carrying splinters of moonlight toward the sea, each ripple lengthening into silky threads that tug your thoughts downstream. With every breath, the world blurs a little more. Cobbles soften to sand, sawdust becomes sweet meadow hay. Even the quill tucked behind your ear loosens its grip until it too drifts away. Let the faint scent of honeysuckle linger, its sweetness rounding the corners of memory, cushioning stray worries until they fold like tired wings. The playhouse lights have vanished completely now. Only the idea of a stage remains, that quiet, welcoming space behind your eyelids, where scenes can play at half speed, where thunder is just a slow drum, and clever lines arrive already whispered. Trust it to keep you company. Trust the pages beneath your pillow to stay safe till morning. You have done enough for one splendid, rain-drenched day, so rest, let the curtain close, and allow the gentle hush of moonlit London to cradle you deeper, deeper into dream.